I recently got this crate G60. Seems like a good deal, but that might not necessarily be true. It's got some good qualities, some things that could be better, and this particular one has some issues. So first off, nice handle. Okay, that's worth 10 bucks, right? Thought the cabinet was pretty good. But this mark right here, that's not a slash, that's a crack from when this was dropped. So I think I'm going to have to fully break it, glue that, and put a brace on it or something. It is a nice crate, 12-inch, 60-watt RMS speaker. But this is from a generation of crate speakers when they stopped making them in the US and started importing the speakers to put in this US-made amp. Also, the speaker is only 4 ohms. You're expecting it to be 8 ohms most of the time. So 60 watts RMS at 4 ohms is quieter and probably not quite as good a sound as a typical 8 ohm speaker. It has a nice Accutronics reverb unit that's made in Cary, Illinois, which I thought was really cool because I used to live right near the factory. But right now the reverb tank isn't working, so it'll be fun to look at that at least. But really the most important thing is the actual amp. The amp itself is made in St. Louis, Missouri, although the power transformer is made in Taiwan. Does the amp even power on? Turning all the volume down. It turns on. Made kind of a weird noise. Definitely something wrong with one or more of the pots. Hopefully that's just a bad connection. Try deoxit and resoldering the connection to the circuit board. But let's try out the other ones. Now the gain channel. Okay, gain channel sounds good, except for that it's completely missing the gain knob. In my opinion, these Crate G series amps have really good clean sounds, so the clean channel is unusable, but the gain channel sounds okay, except for that the gain's turned all the way down, which is really the best way to use this amp anyway. So it's worth something to just use it almost as a power amp with a volume. I'll give you a preliminary demo of how it's sounding right now for just a second. So as it is, it's pretty functional in a minimalist kind of way. If I want to get it back into good shape, we'll see how deoxit helps and resoldering helps. Might need a whole lot of new pots. Okay, aside from a new pot and deoxit, fixing the cabinet, gonna take a look at the reverb tank. It's gonna be a challenge. It's kind of messy in here. The suspension on the reverb tank is completely disintegrated. I think I can find a suitable replacement. Time to take the reverb tank off and have a look at that. When I was wondering what's wrong with the reverb tank, I was thinking when somebody dropped this amp, probably knocked a wire loose. And sure enough, This little teeny tiny wire right here is definitely loose. That's what's wrong with it. If I want to resolder this wire, I'm gonna have to unhook the spring from the chassis. It doesn't make it that much easier to get to. I can actually see a tiny bit of metal where I need to reattach the wire. It's just such a teeny tiny little solder. I'd like to get these wires loose from this clip right here. Now you can definitely see the loose wire, and you can see where it's supposed to go. I was able to get a little metal exposed on the wire and the terminal, get them touching, and then just leave a little bead of solder to hold them together. So to have some way of turning what's left of the shaft on the gain control, I'm gonna get this screwdriver red hot so I can melt a little divot in what's left of the shaft. That way at least I can adjust the gain with the screwdriver. It'll probably start to feel a little hot. That's got to be about red hot by now. There's a lot of sizzle. There's definitely a good slot in there now. It's easy to adjust the gain now with the screwdriver, but before I check if that gets rid of the noise that was very, very loud, I'm going to actually create a circuit with a bunch of smaller speakers. I'm going to put all these speakers in series so that it's going to be a circuit that's like 100 ohms of resistance instead of 4 or 8 or 16. That's not going to hurt anything. It's safe to do. It's just going to make it so that you can't turn up the amp very loud. No matter what you do, you'll get some sound, but the more ohms you have, the less maximum volume you have. And this only applies to solid states, not tube amps. So many amps you can't use quiet. If you don't want to turn up your amp really loud, and it's hard to adjust the volume, you can just put a bunch of speakers together in series. And then you can use your volume without accidentally turning it up too loud. Another really great thing about putting a bunch of speakers in series is that if you have an amp with a really loud floor noise level, an amp that's getting a little bit of hiss or buzz, even with the volume all the way down, as long as you're not trying to use that amp for maximum volume, just go ahead and put a 16 ohm circuit. And this only applies to solid states, not tube amps. If it's solid state, you don't need a maximum volume, you want to lower the minimum floor noise, put a cabinet with speakers with a high ohms. You won't be able to turn it up really high, but it will lower the floor noise. And then I go from the amp's external speaker out, connect that, the positive to the positive on the first speaker, and it's going to return to the amp on this negative right here. So then I go from the negative of this speaker to the positive of the next speaker. So far we've got 4 ohms plus another 4 ohms. So this will be 12 ohms or a little bit less. Go twist it up to the positive of the third speaker. And you go the negative from the third to the positive to the fourth. These are all soldered in series already. You know, 7 times 4, I'm only at 32 ohms. And if they're 5 watts each or so the amp could blow these speakers. So I still need to connect more. So I'll alligator clip from the 7th to the 8th speaker, number 9, and number 9, number 9. The negative from the 11th speaker to the negative return that goes back to the amp. Speakers number 8 and 9 and number 10 and 11 are more than 4 ohms each. So I think the total of the circuit with these 11 speakers, I'm gonna check it out with a multimeter. Get a reading of about 60 ohms of resistance. That might be enough to make this thing very, very quiet. Theoretically, this should not blow these speakers. Well, here's the moment of truth. Here goes. Wow. Oh. Oh, I fixed it. It was this guy. Woo! This pot is so nasty and angry right here. Vicious. I just want to like disconnect that maybe. It actually doesn't get that bad a sound. Do I dare to try out the gain? Anyway, while I got it all open, might as well go in with the solder gun and touch it all up. Sometimes they make little mistakes that you can go in and correct if you know the basics of soldering. Lots more spraying and twisting the knobs before I put it back together and see if it's going to be at all usable. I've been thinking a lot about how to fix the cabinet now. After having this crack, I don't know how strong this is or how ready to break it is. So I either have to just put a brace on there to reinforce it, or I have to try and mend this crack somehow. But I want to take a crack at sawing along the crack, sawing it apart. I'll save the sawdust, glue it back in there together, and get it all nice and flush and straight. And put a brace on the inside too. And now, time for the saw. I sawed from one edge along the crack up to this reinforcement, and then from the other edge up to this piece. But I left a little bit intact. So this wall is flexible. I can get it totally flat. I'm going to fill in the crack with sawdust and glue. Sawdust, glue, more sawdust, and then more glue again, and just keep doing that until it's full. So got it glued and clamped, sitting on a flat surface, and I got the perfect anvil of a weight to weigh it down. And for a brace, I'm going to use this metal plate. I took this off the bottom of a Zoom 505, but it fits in there real nice. I have to make sure I'm not putting screw holes anywhere near the crack. Drill guide holes. It'll blend a little better dry. But if it's on the back of the stage and it's dark and nobody's looking at it, then nobody will even notice. Everything's looking nice and neat and clean on the inside. Now that I got the amp back in place, I really like how that plate fits. Got everything all put back together now. Put the knobs back on the front. It's plugged in. So I'm going to turn it on and let's see if it explodes with noise. No, it doesn't. So how are the pots? Good. Although you have to adjust the gain with a screwdriver. It works good. Oh yeah, does the reverb work? Definitely. That's a lot of reverb. And the side's looking alright. There's nothing left to fix. Now I've got myself an amp.